G'day, guys. Welcome to this week's HashItOut. Once again, gentlemen, joined by Armenio and Noah. How are we?
We're live, right? It's good to be here.
Could go for some amphetamines.
You don't look too battered and bruised. You still, I can't see any black eyes and things, so you must have fared pretty well.
The only thing I lost was some sleep, tracking drama.
Yeah, it didn't affect. I didn't have any trades that were really affected or anything like that. It's not my style.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that we keep banging the drum week in, week out. Self-custody, get things off exchanges.
That's right.
The rights for transparency and things. I think we're pretty big advocates for that. So I don't think all the three of us anyway would come unstuck just from that sort of perspective. But unfortunately, a lot of people have have a big trusted entity like FTX go down, and now we're just seeing like the extent of the fallout of the contagion that sort of has its tentacles throughout the entire industry. And it's pretty far-reaching, isn't it?
Yeah, it
sure is.
Yeah, it's a big event. Let's just call it that.
One of the biggest.
It is an opportunity. Like there is opportunity always in chaos, hopefully, where, people wake up a little bit. They go back to more of a first principles approach in terms of crypto and how it's developed and how they use it. Maybe we even see some, improvements in terms of self-custody. I believe this Sunday, was the biggest ledger sale in their company's history. We just need to get our goddamn ledger development path pushed to market, right? But I'm working on that. Turned up the heat a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of the thorns in our sides. It's been going on for such a long time, and unfortunately, if we had to explain the story behind it and everything like that, no one would believe it. So it's just, it's pretty crazy. But hopefully we get it delivered soon, because a lot of people want to have that hard wallet and then the peace of mind that entails. But me, myself, personally, I definitely prefer the mobile wallet option, just having that larger screen, having the touch screen, being able to see all the transaction details on the mobile wallet, have it cold wallet, a cold storage device in that sense, instead of sort of clicking the tiny little ledger buttons and scrolling through transaction details and things. Yeah, it's with big hands and poor eyesight, it doesn't fare too well.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, to get back to what you said, Armenia, was just hopefully people will sort of wake up after all of this craziness. And one thing that has been kind of good to see, at least even on, who knows how long people will sing the same tune, but a lot of the sort of Ethereum people and DeFi people on crypto Twitter, the sort of general sense that I get is that DeFi, true DeFi, not this centralized bullshit pretending to be DeFi, everybody seems pretty unified in realizing that that's kind of the only way to really push the ball forward in a meaningful way for this industry. Now you have people like CZ who have swept in, and he's kind of become the white knight in all of this, and that kind of goes directly against decentralization. But maybe that's something we could talk about. I know last night there was some tweet that he made there's some potential bailout fund that's being put together, or some kind of it's unclear if it's a bailout or if it's more of a buyout, like a consolidation, Binance acquiring projects. That seems, details are murky, but that seems like sort of the biggest news that we've seen come out of this so far.
Well, that's the biggest shark in the pond right there.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like, okay, he's going to do a crypto consolidation fund. There were a lot of projects that were probably irresponsible with their money, a lot of teams. And it does seem like that was actually part of FTX's game, where they would seed invest in companies and then get them to invest that on their exchange and then roll it through Alameda and create like an infinite money loop, right? Great. But, there was some decent technology there, right? And, it's one of those situations where it's hard to say how predatory that's going to be, because it's like, hey, are you bleeding? Do you need some help?
Help?
Yeah, I imagine the terms are going to be favorable in one direction in that situation.
Yeah.
That's okay, that's business to some degree. I can understand it. And then you also have like user consolidation, right? Where I imagine that user base is going to grow, and okay, that does, for us, we're proof of work, but it kind of creates a weird situation when you have proof of stake protocols where people are staking from exchanges, because now you're probably going to have, the biggest pool centralizing on that one entity. That's probably not good for security assumptions.
Yeah.
But
I know Binance already has a ton of Cardano stake pools that are pretty full, and they make up a significant portion of the staking network on their network, which is not not what you want.
no, it's not ideal. If you're in the proof of stake business, or in that like sphere, don't stake on exchanges. There are a lot of people that are actually running hardware locally, doing work locally. Those are the characters I would say to support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it just goes to show as well, like the resilience, or build on that resilience of the network, having bare metal servers and things like that, getting away from the AWS side, having people run things in their cupboard. I've seen a number of sort of stake pools, single stake pool operators having cool little rigs set up on Raspberry Pis and all kinds of bits and pieces. So by all means, get away from one of those big, large central actors, which then in turn have the majority of consensus over the protocol through voting rights and other factors. So it's just one of those considerations, and definitely by all means jump out and support the little guy.
And most importantly, when you're staking on Binance, you don't have custody of your shit.
Exactly.
Like, that's the biggest thing that has come out of all of this, which is also another good thing to see, because we've been saying this week after week after week after week after week after week, 20 weeks or whatever the hell it's been. Like, take custody of your assets. Don't trust your keys in other people's hands. And, this show's not really about Cardano, but it's about crypto in general. When you're staking on an exchange, you don't have custody of your assets. It's the same shit that blew up FTX. So, that decentralization of the network is important, but I think most importantly is just having your shit and not trusting other people with your assets.
I think there are two main lessons here that I hope everybody not only learns, but we march forward with, and we actually build upon, because at Ergo we can, right? The first has to do with user protection. Okay. I've continually said, open source code, don't move your money into black boxes, custody your keys, because that's user protection, right? And I think we can do better on the hardware wallet side as well. Tomorrow, we have an EF meeting. I'm going to see if I can push for, Trezor development, because we need it, right? We've always needed it. It's just been a matter of like priority. But I think like at this point it's needed. And we also have the ability to build out, we have the paper wallet, which is useful. Multi-sig is another useful tool to potentially, prevent a single point of failure in wallets. But user protection, not just in terms of custody, but also in terms of transaction, needs to be something that we're always just beating that drum, right? Because that ultimately is what, protects users in the network, and, we'll kind of create a safe environment for that, right? The second is privacy, right? And privacy is going to be important, not only because, it's generally nice to not have everybody see everything you own, but, we have to ask the question, okay, a offshore hedge fund that was run by a bunch of unstable kids, from the look of it, blew up. And so now we might, get more regulatory scrutiny in different jurisdictions. And so if people still want to participate and interact, well, now they're going to be in a less friendly environment and privacy becomes more important. So I think that, moving forward, those two things, user protection and privacy, really need to be something as an ecosystem we start looking at and collectively improving upon.
Yeah, one thing I just like to reiterate also, and just to clarify, having that self-custody, also having it in an open source wallet, so there is no black box. There's a number of sort of closed source wallet platforms in the industry. So what difference is that to an exchange? You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You can't see the code behind it. You don't know if you've got custody of your coins in that scenario. So by all means, have self-custody, but have it in an open source wallet as well, because you've got your transparency there. That's the difference, I guess. I guess you touched on the difference between privacy and transparency last week as well. So if you wanted to sort of run through that again.
Was that me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm gonna feed on the what you were just talking about before I talk about.
Sure.
When you have closed source code, it's proprietary. Period. And there really isn't much of a difference between a proprietary exchange wallet, other than the fact that you do lose direct custody, and a proprietary non-exchange wallet, in the sense that the biggest problem with FTX is apparently there was a backdoor. Right?
Yes, they can shuffle money between funds without triggering any sort of red flags.
That's the number one red flag of why I say do not use proprietary wallets, because you do not know if there is a backdoor, and they could say, oh, well, it's a very trusted wallet. Look at how, God, it's got Tom Brady's face at the bus stop. How could you not trust that wallet, right? You don't know. That's literally the lesson here, is you don't know. And so if I were, someone new to crypto, I would want to hear that, because the reality is, the social, approval and history here proved to not matter.
Yeah.
That was one of the most respected exchanges in the industry, and had all of this news and blah, blah, blah. And guess what? There was a backdoor.
It's wild to think.
That's kind of why I've been trying to beat the drum over and over and over. But
yeah,
I'll continue to do that. It's just critical. And people coming to this space that are new, they don't understand that. If you can't see inside of it, you got a problem.
Well, it goes against everything we sort of intuitively have learned. You put your money in a bank account. Bye-bye. You don't know where that money goes. But culturally, it's what we've come to accept. And, it's sort of the whole point of why we're here. And people that are new, maybe people get into crypto to speculate, or they have fun with NFTs or whatever it may be. A lot of people don't even know what first principles means, or it's just not intuitively something that most new users are going to know. So that's why we keep banging the drum.
We need better education, because a lot of people got caught.
Yeah.
Just that simple. There's a lot of people lost their money because of trust. And really, one of the goals of our industry should be to eliminate trust. And there are principles you can follow that will protect you.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest things, isn't it, really? Just that breaking of trust, or instilling the trust. And it kind of goes to what Noah was saying, people then entrusting CZ with his bailout, and sort of being the white knight in this industry at this time, sort of promoting that product and that image. But ultimately, I think it's hopefully a big sort of wake up scenario for the industry, because it's a huge thing. A lot of people got caught out, and including people who may have been sort of veterans in the crypto scene, because they trusted an entity which they kind of let their guard down.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there was a couple of projects that, had tokens on FTX that probably didn't deserve the trust of the people that held their tokens, that then, got caught by a larger fish that they shouldn't have trusted. It's kind of insane to think about, but it's very, I would say, high potential. But in terms of privacy, right, the goal is to build open infrastructure. Now, what that means is, in terms of like a network, is if you have applications and interacting with them, the source code of that is transparent. You can see inside of it. You can understand how it works. To some degree, you could almost look at it like a machine, right? And you have the blueprints and manufacturing process and how the machine runs available. So anybody can look at that, audit it, and it creates a much more secure trust assumption than having something that is private and you have no idea how it works and what is actually inside of it, right? So in terms of infrastructure, you do not want privacy. You want transparency. You want to be able to see how things work, how they operate, because collectively that protects us all. Now, and what that means is people that are coming in and building with that philosophy should naturally want things to be open source. No, it creates a unique environment where, because it's open source, everybody kind of collectively owns it. Everyone can collectively use it. It's kind of like a community development rather than just a private entity that's selling the latest, black box that you can move into when something happens. That's not popular to say because a lot of, development does take work, and, work takes funding, and, then there's some mechanism of funding. But from a principled perspective, if we want to create systems that protect people, we have to be open source because it eliminates trust. Right.
One thing we said also previously, just in regards to basically having those black boxes, and it's to do with basically trying to get away from that proprietary software where people sort of hide behind the fact of sort of like a what's the term I'm looking for here? Like an industry edge on the proprietary software.
Yeah, they want to trade secret. Is what you would call it. And you know what? That mentality will never leave the space. But the reality is, in doing that, you have to trust them.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. You have to trust them. And hopefully people that, learn about crypto and about first principles come out with the conclusion, I don't want to trust you. I don't want to have to try to trust you. That's the whole point of this industry, is to eliminate trust. Now, in terms of, go for it, Noah.
No, you finish. Yeah.
I was going to say, in terms of user privacy, that's different. We should be able to move through this infrastructure in a way that protects our privacy as we choose to reveal. But the infrastructure itself needs to be transparent.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to touch on open source. Something, and I said this on Twitter. There's been so much back and forth about all this stuff on social media and all the channels, and something that's been grinding my gears, and these are my words only, nobody else here, just how the Cardano community sort of beats this ideological drum, but doesn't, they talk the talk, but they don't necessarily walk the walk. A lot of projects are a black box. They have nothing to show, and they've got a token, and the token doesn't do much, but we promise it will, but maybe we won't show you how it works. But I hope people see what's happened in this last week, and it kind of shakes things up. I know in the Ergo community, we have a pretty strong, we as a community, we have strong values about how things should be done, and we call out bullshit when we see it.
Well, you got to look at the advantage, right? And this is one thing that I think that is a limiting factor. I do not think that's a bonus for them.
No, because look at where their development community is at.
Well, if you have 10 people that are building the same or a similar framework in parallel, in private, I would say that collectively they would push something out faster that's more secure, that creates a standard. And, if you look at UTXO, it's composable, right? That's kind of the point. So if you have that mind share focused on, instead of 10 separate people in private doing 10 separate tasks, if you have that collective mind share channeled into one solution or maybe two, right? There are some different ways you could potentially do some things. You're going to accomplish that framework a lot faster and a lot more secure, and you're going to move faster as that accelerates. I think that's sometimes why people say, wow, how does the ergo community move so fast when they're so small? Because we move, we kind of get that group mind into ideas. How did we get Babel fees implemented? We had a bunch of people that were looking at it and discussing how to do it, and they came to a common framework, and now boom, everyone can potentially plug that into whatever they're building, right?
Yeah, and on that specifically, that sort of speaks to the elegance of Ergo's design, I think, too, because something like that doesn't require a hard fork to implement. That's sort of a tangent, but yeah, when you have 10 people all working on the same thing, that's 90% wasted time. Really?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's inefficient, right?
Yeah, it's so inefficient, and the
end result is probably going to be worse than if you had all 10, together as one.
Yeah,
but
and that's not to throw shade at the Cardano community.
No,
but,
that's to throw shade at all of crypto that is building proprietary software. I don't mind saying that. And the reality is that's not a popular opinion. And people can build on Ergo, and they can have whatever they want, open or closed. And I will never directly be like, that's a problem. But I will talk about that as a general principle, because user protection.
Mm-hmm. Just elaborating on Babel fees also, and then the EIP itself, proposed by a community member, took it upon himself, Nitram, and then expanded upon by LGD, and finally, like, we had the wallet devs look over it, the core devs look over it, and ultimately it was implemented. So it's a cool one that sort of sparked from the community and then ultimately implemented. I think that's fantastic to see.
I think it'd be really cool to see some sort of market infrastructure built around that framework, like, because my understanding is you set like a token sell price where people can swap for that price that's set, but prices fluctuate. What if there was some sort of marketplace where you could set stop losses for like a Babel box, something, so that it tracks spectrum prices or any number of
there are all kinds of really unique
it's pretty cool
that could be built into Babel boxes, but especially once we start to see multiple dexes and the ecosystem continues to grow, you're going to have more and more opportunity to really flex the power of extended UTXO.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty crazy to think, and I know we're still in the infancy of EUTXO, but just seeing the possibilities now, how they differ and how composable and expressive and things are in the EUTXO model, it's pretty crazy to think. Like, we've got smart pools, Babel fees, like, just to name a couple of things just off the top of my head, but what it entails, like order books and like decentralized grid bots and having the deterministic fee structure and things like that, where what things cost prior and you can engage in things. And Yeah, it's just I don't know. It kind of blows my mind at times just to see how early we are in there, and then the possibilities. Just sort of thinking about it.
Sure, and then you add on the potential to have multiple outputs in a single transaction, and all of these different boxes throughout the network. You can really build some cool stuff, especially once you start to get data analytics plugs into bots, and there's just a huge, I don't know, it's a green pasture, is what I would say. A lot we can do there.
Yeah, today I've been playing a lot of Blobtopia.
I've noticed.
It's the peak of ergo development. No, I had to give a shout out to Haley PDLL. It's been super fun, and it's kind of a silly sort of gimmick game, but I can tell they put a lot of work into it, and it works really well, and it's fun, and yeah, it's cool to see stuff like that pop up in the.
No, it's great to see stuff like that. Safe Wallet, was nice open source transparent wallet that it really was a stepping stone, and still is a really nice product to play with.
With Mixer integration also.
Yeah, so the reality is, even though we have all of this macro madness. Right. And it won't go away. That's the thing with crypto, is there's always some new drama every week. Maybe there will be some contagion. Maybe there will be some regulatory, smoke. Maybe there will be whatever. The reality is, I think as a community, if we just focus on solid development principles and, keep doing what we're doing.
Keep banging the drum.
Yeah, keep banging the drum on kind of the marketing side, because this is what's important, right? If we want to take crypto seriously, we need to have ecosystems that actively try to protect their users and provide privacy for the people that need it.
Yeah, I think this last cycle, it's basically a means of liquidity extraction from retail. We saw it time and time again, and ultimately, when things keep going belly up like this, like with Luna and FTX and Celsius, you name it, ultimately the retail are the ones who get wrecked and hurt on the ground level, sort of on the boots sort of scenario, because the unfortunate side to that is you may end up losing sort of like that person, but then the negative effect as well. Like I think the principle goes, like, if you have one person make one good comment, like the word of mouth feeds to one person. On a negative side, it feeds to 10. So if we have people constantly getting wrecked, it's no good for user adoption long term in the industry.
No, and it's really sad to see that let's say part of their gimmick was to raise with the token before it's list the treasury on the exchange, and then roll that through and create their own money printing machine, which is really kind of like a money absorbing machine. So how they had let's say information advantage and the black hole to cycle funds through, and they still ended up blowing things up. It's like
it's kind of mind boggling, isn't it? You've got all the advantages right in front of you. You've got full transparency of the game in front of you, and you still lose $30-odd billion.
Yeah, that's a special level of stupid, if you ask me. That took a special level of stupid. I don't know how else to say it, but that's a side point.
Yeah. Fortunately, I think largely, just from what I've seen, our community has been pretty insulated from at least FTX directly, but I know there's concern about Gate. I know there's concern about
there's fear. There's fear right now. That I think proofs of reserves that exchanges are coming out with on one hand is nice, right? But
I mean,
it's also like
smoke and mirrors, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's really not there's some exchanges that have been accused of basically running like a repo rate, or send tokens for the snapshot to show that you don't have an issue, and who knows what's happening on the back end. Hopefully this industry cleans up a little bit. I would say us, we have no direct exposure. The Ergo Foundation treasury is in a cold storage wallet secured by multi-sig, right? So we have no issue there. You know, in terms of exchange exposure, projects do basically have to sign a contract to provide some market liquidity on exchanges and keep that within certain levels, which usually is actually quite low. But so we do have some exposure on every big exchange that we're listed on by contract, right? And that's something that we just have to live with. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of it, but is what it is. In terms of VCs, we have none. We have had VCs approach the Ergo Foundation many times, actually. And the difficulty is they tend to come in and say, hey, I'll buy X amount of tokens for 30% discount. And, I usually tell them to go visit Mark, and they think it's Glasgow. But then I tell them, it's the market buy. So we have
he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, that market buy. He's always selling, right? But it's something that we could look at that and say, okay, we could have raised liquidity a lot quicker, but I think it's much better to say, okay, we're here for the long term, right? We're here to build, on Ergo with Ergo. So let's focus on our ecosystem and not necessarily just I don't know. You can buy access in this space. That's just the reality of it. I mean, I at one point had FTX's price sheet, it wasn't anything that I would want to pay him.
Certainly not now.
I saw Waves I saw on Twitter Waves, like the Waves project. One of the guys, I can't remember who it was, tweeted that. Sasha must have been. If you know, you know what I'm talking about. It was 1.5 mil, he said. And maybe that's not what your sheet reflected, but that's what he said.
Let's just say that they're a bigger project than us.
Yeah. In
terms of market access. So that just gives you a sad look, and then they say, oh, we'll pay you in stables, but then you have to keep it on our exchanges and then cycle it through and raise other tokens without ever really spending anything. That's insane. But the reality is, I hope that there is some light in that side of the market, because it could use some disinfectant. If that can happen, and users lose $9 billion, that's a problem. We should build systems that are trustless. That's the point. Like, we have the ability, I believe, to do that in a way that really allows for the transaction of value in a way that eliminates these counterparties, eliminates a certain risk, and eliminates trust. That's where we should be headed. And to see something that like this is just another time where I just put my head down and just, sometimes I love the technology and I hate the space. I have no other way to put it.
I think worth talking about, because for the foreseeable future, we do have centralized exchanges as a part of our space. So
Sure.
I've seen a lot of chatter about proof of reserves. I think a lot of it is bullshit. I think the idea of having a snapshot for a proof of reserve is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well, if you're gonna have proof of reserves, I think it needs to be auditable in real time.
It needs to be something that the user can actually go look at the reserve, what transactions are in and out in real time.
Yeah, and I know what exchanges are thinking in terms of not wanting that, is because you always have a hot wallet, a cold wallet, and if you do have like a hot wallet that is in a low balance, and you also have some derivatives that are supposed to be backed, you could potentially use that information to your advantage, right? And I think that they know that, but as well, having real-time auditability hot cold would be a step forward. Let's just call it that. Having the ability to have auditable liabilities, that would be a much bigger step forward.
That's what I was just going to say. The proof of reserves is only one half of the picture. It's like, all of the debts that they have aren't really... that was the whole issue with FTX. Nobody knew all the what was owed.
Liabilities.
Yeah.
So that's a... I don't know. I think one of the best things I read, I don't even know where. Somebody wrote it, and whoever did, I have to tip my hat to them. They said, at best, exchanges are like a public toilet. Get in and out as quick as you can. Don't touch anything.
Very well said.
Very well said.
Just like handle your business and go, right? It's true. It's true. I like it.
One, touching on the liability side of things, and I think the FTX side brings it to light also, is basically wrapped tokens and whether there's anything backing them. I know that you could have been selling paper in the whole scheme of things, and I think was it a couple of billion worth of liabilities in BTC, or 1.4 or something, I think off the top of my head, but I think there was only 1.1 BTC on their balance sheet as collateral for that amount. So
what was the number you just said?
I believe on their balance sheet it was 1.4 billion worth of BTC liabilities, but only 1.1 BTC in their balance as collateral. So what were they doing? Trading paper.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing that people have feared for actually a long time, is that if you move into a black box, right, there is a potential that you could, get some type of rehypothecation to where, maybe there's actually one Bitcoin that moved into the black box, but there are 3 that are, being traded, and all they have to do is cover the one as it exits. If they have that liquidity to cover a withdrawal, nobody will ever know. And that's been something that, people have feared anyway, that is possible because nobody can see. Not that it's a common practice, but
the only reason all of this blew up is because people withdrew all at the same time, and those 4 Bitcoins that were there, everybody wanted them back instead of just the one.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. And you do get into the contagion where I think it's probably Solana, since it's FTX. If they did have wrapped assets that were held that didn't exist, those, a wrapped asset is essentially like a receipt that you're supposed to be able to call for the original, right? But if there's no original, you have a receipt.
Yeah, I think there is like a, what is it? BTC.
Yeah, that was
Solid.
BTC.
It's currently trading at $1,000.65.
The thing is, it's still tradable, so I think people have been buying it around $2,000 or $3,000, thinking that they can redeem it later. But
the redemptions and deposits were done via FTX. That's
one thing I always scratch my head about. There are still people that are trading like Luna Classic. I don't know why, but
it's so stupid.
But I don't know. I don't even know. Like that point, I can't even quantify it, but we'll have fun, I guess.
Dude, just in regards to that, do you think tokenomics plays a big factor in it? People not understanding, having
tokenomics is a fascinating topic to really explore. You do have this ability where if you emit something too slowly, you are going to have difficulty with liquidity. You emit something too quickly, you're going to debase yourself. People tend to think that Bitcoin is deflationary, and from one perspective that's true. Its supply is, in terms of the emission, does half every once in a while, but the supply is still growing. It still is inflationary.
Right.
It's just looking at the whole picture. It becomes more scarce over time. Yeah. Then you have you have some that I've seen some projects like CCX is an interesting project in terms of their inflation rate, where it's steady, and it'll be steady for, I don't know how long exactly their schedule is, but longer than I'll be alive. Like there's some that are quick, but sometimes there's a benefit to that. It's
yeah, I mean, we had our whole EIP 27 journey where our emission rate changed.
Where we needed to have a subsidy for our security as we can get everything in place, that storage rate starts to make more sense, and dust can be recycled. And the reality is, as we build a more complex system throughout the network, we'll probably see a lot more dust, especially if you're using Babel boxes and Babel swaps and miner, if
you're playing Blobtopia every day like I do.
Yeah, if you're playing Blobtopia, we're probably going to have a lot of little transactions that are eventually going to make it up to the miners. And as the system becomes more complex and Ergo is kind of broken as it moves through all of the different boxes involved, I think that is a nice long-term, economic incentive. But the reality is, you have some people out there that trade just by looking at tokenomics. What are they building? I don't know. I don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
They literally will look at token emissions as one of their driving analytic points for how they operate, which is weird. But there's a lot of miners out there that are like, I don't really care what I mine. I just want it to be, pay more than the cost of my electricity, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a similar mindset. Personally,
it's like fundamental analysis versus technical analysis, I suppose.
Yeah. So, personally, I prefer technical analysis, because there's a ton of tokens out there with, emissions that may be modeled, perfectly, but then they're ultimately like Bitcoin on Solana if there's nothing backing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, sad, but it's just true.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Lunar Classic people just caught up in the tokenomics and the price factor of what it was and where it could go, and that speculation. Like, obviously it was, I don't know, off the top of my head, say $100-$200, whatever it was, and now it's fractions of a penny. I think there's an odd chance that it may go back to that. But if you look at the decimal places and the amount of circulating supply and everything, like all those combining factors, like it would be like trillions and trillions of dollars of market cap, quadrillions probably. Just throwing a number out there off the top of my head. Like, I know that's probably the case for SHIB. I think it's like $4 quadrillion or something if it goes to $1, something crazy like that.
Yeah, it's a little silly.
I think really a good lesson to take from all of this is you got to be very, very, very cautious when you have a black box that is saying, put your money in this black box and we're going to give you a number with a percentage, right? Because you have no idea how that even works. So hopefully in terms of DeFi, especially like any type of custodial service where it's like TradeFi, whatever you want to call it. If it's not transparent and they're saying, give me your money and I'll give you back a little more, run.
Well, a prime example of that actually is sort of the little insight that you gave us this week in regards to the offering to be listed on or have a UST pair. And obviously, like yourself and Alex, Kushti did a bit of due diligence there and sort of have that. They did have that transparency being open source, and you could dive in there, check things out, and then just sort of red flags went up everywhere.
Let's look into this, because there's always, Tether FUD out there. There's always some USDC, rumor that's floating, and whether it's true or not, I don't know. I think we're kind of unfortunately in the same situation where you can't really, I don't think, at least Tether anyway, has really disclosed their books in any meaningful way. And it's not real-time auditability, which would be nice, but that's a whole nother side point. So we dove into it and we looked and we both came back and I was like, I think this is sketchy. And he's like, this seems like some pretty shady shit. Like, let's avoid this because I don't see how this is sustainable.
Yeah, speaking of black boxes, I know we have a few projects coming in the near future. Duck Pools announced, I think, November 20th. They're doing their launch. I don't know if it's a beta or full launch or what, but I don't know if they're going to be open source or not.
We'll see.
If they're not, I would encourage you to, think about the assumptions you're making.
Yeah, I'll never call out a project directly because I do understand, number one, there's work involved in development, right? And being a proof of work network, I respect developer work. I really do. It does take time, energy, effort. And the other thing is when you go open source, you essentially are taking your work and you're naked in front of everybody. Right?
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it. And so, there are some people that are like, I want to refactor things. I want to clean things up. They really want to create quality before they do, let's say, create transparency. They want to go to the gym and exercise a little bit before they get naked.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And I'm like, okay, I get that. I'm not gonna say that you can't do that or shouldn't do that, because the reality is there have been cases where somebody throws out an open source framework that has an issue and it's not debugged, it's taken and then used, and it can create a problem, right?
Yeah.
But I've always, encouraged at least the commitment, right? Because if somebody gives their word publicly, okay, then at least publicly people can know whether they keep it or not.
Mm-hmm. And if they don't, maybe they do, maybe they don't. If they don't, make that judgment call and know the assumptions that you're making.
Exactly. At least you have more information and make an assumption. But it is something that people need to really look at as risk in that sense.
Yep.
Yeah, we keep beating
Don't
that
go
drum.
aping in.
Yeah, this the whole KYA thing. Know your assumptions, know what's going on behind the scenes, and actually, like Nemo's comment on one of, I think it was a tweet, a standalone tweet. I think it was cover your ass. So for KYA, so I think that's pretty fitting also.
Oh, it's
that's
true.
So good.
I mean, that needs to be the assumption. And if we build as a community with that principle in mind, we will end up creating a lot of useful infrastructure that protects users.
Yeah.
And one thing I have to tip my hat to in terms of, DeFi, let's say on Ethereum, is there are protocols that were built with that mentality. And, Luna goes out of business. Who's the first person they pay off? The actual decentralized finance exposure they had to, because they can't rug it. The same thing was true with FTX. Like, that showed that external actor in both cases had to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, without coughing up the collateral, then they're not going to get their funds back in return. It's just that simple. Code's law, and they're not going to go and sweet talk the code there to try and whisper sweet nothings in their ear and get nothing in return. But yeah, it is what it is.
So
there's no Binance bailout for DeFi. Unless you actually buy out the tokens or something, but that's different.
Yeah, you can't. You have to be responsible.
Yeah,
just that simple. Yep. You have to. It's enforced. So I do think that is the mentality we should move forward with. This year has been a complete shit show in terms of security assumptions and things blowing up and central actors, falling, and bridges with terrible assumptions or closed code or open issues with their audits. There's a ton that we can extract and learn from, and hopefully as we move into 2023 things get a little bit better, just in terms of an industry. Because the reality is, in my opinion, if somebody you look at all of the hacks and central parties that are blowing up. It's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, talking to people that aren't into crypto and blockchain, it's like there's this like veil of shame that I have to hang over my head. Like I swear it's not like that.
Yeah. You always have to approach a discussion like that on the defensive and just start like, this is not how it is. This is blah blah blah. This is why that happened. And
it is how it is. Unfortunately,
how can we get adoption in an industry that it's fucking embarrassing looking at shit like we won't?
Yeah.
Yep.
We just won't.
Yeah, I'm hoping the fallout of this is that all the shit that needs to get washed out will get washed out, and that's why this whole Binance liquidity fund thing is concerning to me.
I'm sure CZ has enough intelligence that he's going to come in and he's going to get some deals on some good stuff, and everything else he's not going to touch.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope all the bullshit gets flushed down the drain.
I think he's at least got the intelligence to understand what is valuable. Valuable.
Yeah.
In terms of the funds that he brings in, maybe they get the grade B. I don't know, but we'll see.
They get the Lunas.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know, but I think that's the biggest thing fundamentally we need to address as a space if we want to be taken seriously. It's the bottom line.
Yeah, most definitely. Very well said. I think we're just coming up to time, gentlemen, and I think we're just starting to get emotional as well. So I'd love to sort of keep going on and keep hashing this out and see where we end up. But
maybe next week. Who knows what we'll find out by then?
Well, exactly. Is there any last words that we want to sort of talk about just in regards to this?
Well, I think bottom line is moving forward in my mind. I don't know. I really want to push protecting users and privacy. Those are going to become two most important things that we can deliver. In terms of what people choose to build on Ergo, we can be principled and really try to vote, with your money, right? That's something people have talked about off chain for a long time. Is that's the ultimate form of protest, because in terms of presenting through voting, nothing really seems to change. But if you want that, let's say applications that are built the right way, vote with your tokens, use them.
Yep.
If you don't want applications that are built in ways that don't protect users, don't use them.
Simple as that. Money talks.
Yeah.
Yourself, Noah?
Yeah, I would like to give a shout out to MHS Sam and his team.
Yeah.
They had a big milestone this week after a lot of work over the last several months. I know it wasn't an easy process for them, and there's a lot of bugs and setbacks along the way, but man, it's really, really cool to see the Rosen Bridge on mainnet, both on Ergo and Cardano. Looking forward to that getting opened up to a more public test and playing around with it. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And multi-sig.
Yeah, I was about to say that as well. Delivering multi-sig with the Minotaur wallet.
Yeah, I don't know if people really, the Rosen Bridge is the flashy one. I don't know if people really value the multi-sig in the way that they should, because it opens up a lot of for treasuries of projects. It gives
even single users.
That's something to hash out right there, is the value of multi-sig.
Yeah, maybe next week we can talk about that.
Yeah, let's see if we can get through this next one.
Yeah. And how about you, CW? What have you got to say?
For myself, probably just once again, just reiterating what you guys are talking about. Those first principles, open source transparency. I know people sort of hide behind the guise of competitive advantage and things like that, but ultimately, you see that acceleration from development, having multiple eyes, multiple parties looking over your code, contributing and everything along those lines. One thing that we've sort of mentioned previous as well is you build the community around your product. And if people want to go and fork your code, that's all well and good, but they're not going to fork your community over as well. That's your true value and your keepsake there. So that's just one thing I'd like to sort of mention there. And just on the multi-sig side of things as well, for a single user, it's basically like a 2FA for your own wallet, having multiple signatures. You could have 2, 3, or having to sign that multiple times to make a transaction go through just for your own personal wallet. I think that's fantastic security just from that front.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure once again. Hold on, who knows what this week's going to entail? So
hold on to your butts.
I've lost my sleep. I had no exposure to anything, but I did lose some sleep following this nonsense.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Crypto, baby.
Crypto, baby.
Sad, but true.
Yeah. Been a pleasure chatting, gentlemen, and thanks everyone for tuning in once again and listening to us. Thanks very much. Have a good one.
See ya.